TradeTheNBI.com. This is John. This report is for the 8th of April, and peace is broken out, theoretically, a ceasefire, and the market is very excited by that. And they were actually, obviously, early on. The dynamic was very interesting because any of the selling was being bought up. So there were people that know who knew the direction of things. And, it's one of those things where the readings we all got were buy signals intraday, and it just continued to escalate from there. And you can see from the daily standpoint, we'd already had a buy on the NASDAQ, but that orange dipping below the green also super bullish from that standpoint. And you can see we're already up 170 plus. So we already had that situation here for the NQ where green was already above cyan. That was already bullish from back here. And the orange staying below continued that. So that was all congruent. It was just a question of was it sustainable? And really it became very clear early on because in the day, everyone's like, oh, the bombing has started early. No, what Trump did was said, hey, look, you just refurnished your Carg Island with all these missile defense batteries and troops. Take a look. And they wiped them out in the middle of the day, and we can look at the intraday and see exactly when that happened because the market dipped on that. But what it was saying is, look, you can be a martyr, but at the end of the day, you're making a decision that you're going to be dead the next day. And that's what the U.S. was proving. And then secondarily, you saw a little bit later the Israelis were bombing inside of Tehran, specific key points. And then the critical one, I think, was the bombing between Tehran and the northern part of Iran near the Armenian border, and that because they bombed the road. And that was saying to them, look, I'm going to cut you off from the northern part, and we're going to supply the rebel forces that exist in that area, and you won't be able to get troops up there because we've shut everything off. Now, well, look at this: the oil. Okay, that's still 95 a barrel. So scream all you want about how wonderful that is. Yeah, that's still a problem. And fine, 2 weeks you'll be able to get some stuff across there that could stave off some serious disasters that were already starting to happen. We were already starting to see industry close and things like that in Asia and stuff because they just didn't have the chemicals, plastics, things like that, because those are the byproducts that all come through the strait. So for 2 weeks, they're going to be scrambling to get as many ships as possible through that area as quickly as they can, and everyone's going to be on pins and needles to whether or not it holds. It was something that obviously Trump wanted, but from a rhetoric standpoint, look, he did exactly what he usually does. You speak hyperbolically, and in this case, you had to go really insane because these guys already speak insane about wiping Israel off the map, blah, 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 blah. So, you can say it was a come to Jesus moment for them when they realized, we're going to be obliterated here. Whether he follows through with that or not, we're still not making it into the next day. So, a little bit of rationale comes in that point because you can murder yourself, but you don't get to make any decisions and you have no power at that point. So, yeah, it sort of becomes a self-preservation. Now, the euro very excited by this because basically he saves the eurozone for a little bit of time. I mean, the economic problems from the eurozone are a whole separate issue, but they don't have to buy as many dollars. So and of course, it's a dream to dump the dollar, which makes no sense because it's going to be one of the faster growing economies after the setback of this higher inflation, which is coming. And gold is representing that. And we knew that to expect this move. In fact, they're all talking about how Bitcoin's ripping and stuff. This is a much bigger proportional move with gold than you're seeing with a Bitcoin in that right here. And fine, it's up a little bit, but this is still range bound. Because at the end of the day, you were probably getting parties that were starting to trade in Bitcoin for the oil in that setup. So here it was the other day. We had the buy signal return came back in here when we crossed over magenta over the yellow here and started having our green and DOC red rising. So it was all pretty clean. And of course, as soon as the ceasefire broke out, skyrocket move upward. But we're already in a buy signal, so nothing had changed from our perspective of it. When we look at it from intraday, you started with the optimists, and then that quickly faded and then continued to fade as the bombing was taking place. We kept making new lows, and then miraculously you start to see a turnaround, and this was a pretty deep move here. This is why I marked this red line, because in the programming of that, this is an area that always gets a reversal. What you have is just an excessive amount of selling as soon as that green starts to make its turn. And you'll note that's why we actually have the indication there. And then when the orange dips below is where you have your conversion turnaround, and that led to the beginning of it. And it never stopped, even despite all of the time passing and the warnings. And that was your clue that there were people that kind of knew. And then as we got towards the middle end of the day, you had your brief sell-off to clear any I got to keep that away from there so you can see it. And, you clear out any of your weak hands here, and boom. So all these call buyers that were shooting it up at this particular point towards the end already knew what was going to be happening. And so as soon as futures opened up, boom. I mean, it's over. You don't get a chance to make this play. You're going to come into it if you weren't already, following indicators. Good luck. You had to have known what was taking place within that. And that makes the difference. Oops, went too far. There we go. So overall, what do we got? Well, you're going to have this brief bullish period, but then you're going to start reckoning you're not going to see oil return because you've got serious damage in a lot of these different places that isn't going to get corrected overnight, and it's going to mean some serious investment. Um, Obviously, hey, maybe new equipment. And I think you're probably going to see these Gulf states realize that, hey, we're probably going to increase our alternative pipelines to the Red Sea and, bifurcate, how things directionally go. And we'll see if there's even a deal worked out. The world's just got a reprieve at this particular state to kind of move things along for a little bit. But, as a threat standpoint or whatever, you can argue that he got what he wanted from that standpoint. I mean, they've been diminished. They're making a heck of a lot of money, though, once they start selling their oil. But they also realize that could all be destroyed in an instant, and it's a mutual assured destruction from that standpoint. They got their licks in against Israel, which was fun, but they did more damage to their neighbors. So I think they created more of a problem in that aspect. If they had just gone after Israel, it would have been a far better political move on their part. But I don't know that they had the capability or the reach to be significantly effective that way, and that's why they chose to go after the Arab partners as well. Probably a long-term mistake, but all those guys who made these decisions are pretty much dead. So what are you going to do with that? Broadly speaking, though, there are a lot of headwinds ahead of us. This gets us back a ways, and when you look at it, you're still at 6,800, almost 7,000. And the Fed hasn't done a thing. All the major players financially were sitting on the sidelines while all this was taking place, and the market really didn't move a whole lot. So it was a benign event despite the drama. As always, anything relevant, I will let you know. Trade well.